So could I please ask for a mover and a seconder, please, to reconvene? Councillor Zanella and Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. Welcome to those who are watching on live stream, and we're sorry for our technical difficulties that you were not able to have any audio. So just to give you a quick recap, we have the one planning application in front of us this evening. We've had no correspondence received to date, and we're going to go through some presentations. If people online had some questions or comments that they would like to make, please send it to clerksservices@innisfil.ca, and we'll make sure that everyone sees your comments. So we'll now hear from Kirsten Morris, Senior Planner, who will provide a high-level summary of the application. Ms. Morris.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of Council, staff, and members of the public. The purpose of this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment for 1326 Innisfil Beach Road. The purpose of the application is to permit an 8-story mixed-use building consisting of 364 condominium residential units and 10 ground floor live-work units by rezoning the subject lands to a site-specific mixed-use 1 exception zone. The zoning bylaw amendment proposes site-specific provisions to permit an increased height, increased angular plane, decreased minimum floor area for a residential dwelling unit, and site-specific parking standards for the residential parking spaces and visitor parking spaces. Live-work units are also included as a permitted use within the draft zoning bylaw amendment. A site plan control application will also be required to facilitate the development, which is proposed to be submitted later in the approvals process. So the subject lands are located within the primary settlement area of Alcona and have frontage on Innisfil Beach Road. Surrounding lands to the north and south are residential, with Alcona Glen Elementary School directly east of the property and an existing single detached dwelling and commercial plaza to the west. There's an existing heritage dwelling on the lands, which is subject to a heritage preservation agreement, and the lands are on the town's heritage inventory list. Any Heritage Act implications will be reviewed and discussed further with the applicant and the Heritage Advisory Committee as necessary. Here's an image of the proposed concept, a view from Innisfil Beach Road. I won't describe it too much as the applicant also has a presentation tonight, but you can see the heritage dwelling has been incorporated into the proposed concept. So the application will be reviewed by staff for consistency and conformity with applicable provincial, county, and town policies, which are listed on this slide. The relevant planning policies that will be reviewed by staff are detailed in the staff report on tonight's agenda and include policies of the provincial planning statement, the Simcoe County official plan, Innisfil official plan, the Lake Simcoe protection plan, and the zoning bylaw. Staff's evaluation of the proposal against the applicable policies will be detailed in a future recommendation report to Council. So we have received a number of agency comments to date, including from Bell Canada, who have indicated no comments. South Simcoe Police have provided their standard comment regarding rooftop access to mount radio antennas, which will be required if the proposed structure interferes with existing emergency radio transmissions. Huron-Wendat First Nation have requested to review the archaeological assessments. LSRCA has indicated they have no comments. Alderville First Nation has also requested to review the archaeological assessments. We also received comments from the Simcoe-Muskoka Catholic District School Board this week, who provided their standard condition regarding school capacity in the area, as well as the Simcoe County District School Board, who have identified their concerns with the proposed shadowing and overlook onto the adjacent elementary school with the proposed increase in height that is being requested. To summarize, the proposed 8-story mixed-use building consists of 364 condo units and 10 ground floor live-work units, and they front on Innisfil Beach Road. The building is proposed to be U-shaped with surface level and underground parking, proposed to be located behind the building and screened from the street. The applicant is proposing to preserve and incorporate the existing heritage dwelling on the lands into the proposed development, And the subject lands, as noted, are on the heritage inventory list and subject to a heritage preservation agreement. So any Heritage Act implications will be reviewed and discussed further with the applicant and Heritage Advisory Committee as necessary. In terms of next steps, staff will review and consider all public, council, department, and agency comments and report back to council on a recommendation at a future meeting. Notice will be provided to all who requested notification or submitted written correspondence. If the zoning amendment is approved by council, a site plan control process is required to facilitate the proposed development, which is delegated to staff for approval. And if anybody has any additional questions or comments, you can reach out to me by email or phone, or visit our Get Involved page for more information on the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. We'll now hear from James Hunter of Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of the applicant, who will provide further context to the application.
Good evening, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Fowler, and members of council, along with staff and members of the public who are here in attendance tonight. My name is James Hunter, and I'm associate with Innovative Planning Solutions. We're here tonight representing the owner and applicant of a zoning bylaw amendment application for 1326 Innisfil Beach Road. So it is noted the municipal address is 1326 Innisfil Beach Road, and the property has land holdings of 1.3 hectares and 114 meters of frontage along Innisfil Beach Road. The lands are currently vacant with sparse trees and vegetation. However, as noted by Mayor Morris, there is an existing heritage house which was relocated to the front of the property, which you can just see on the aerial, and I'm sure most of you already know. And the lands are relatively flat in nature, but there is an increase in elevation towards the rear yard of the property, which we're incorporating into our development. For surrounding land uses, to put into context, to the north are lands subject to future residential development, and these are draft plan approved. Adjacent to the east is the Kona Glen Elementary School, and east of that is the existing residential neighborhoods. To the south, adjacent is Innisfil Beach Road with residential neighborhoods and the county home sales office located on the south side of Innisfil Beach Road. And to the west of our property, there is one detached dwelling located on a large property adjacent. And to the west of that, there's a commercial plaza at the corner of Webster and Innisfil Beach Road. The proposed development that we're supporting with the zoning bylaw amendment is an 8-story mixed-use development. So this is designed in a U-shaped built form with a common outdoor amenity space interior. It's hard to see on the slide, but the landscape open space is located above the parking garage. And the units in this building are 364 units, but they're broken down into bachelor, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom options. And we're providing a range of the unit types from 32 to 65 meters squared, more commonly known as 350 to 700 square feet. So the goal is to offer a variety of unit sizes based on market demand. Along with that, there's a step 2-story podium fronting Innisfil Beach Road, and this has the 10 live work units, which does include both a residential and a commercial component. And the idea as well is to incorporate that 2-story podium to incorporate the parking levels and screen it from the street side. In addition, what we're looking to do is attract businesses to the location and offer smaller commercial spaces, because Innisfil Beach Road in Okona as a whole primarily contains larger commercial space. To access the site, there's 2 points, one to the east, one to the west. This is a right in, right out, so we're controlling site access into the site. As well, there's 435 parking spaces that are offered, and 318 of those spaces are located within a 2-level garage, and this is below grade and behind the 2-story parking podium. In addition to that, there's a blue kind of overlay. It's hard to see, but that's the Heritage House, which is front and center as the focal point of our site, and that's integrated into the podium. And along with that Heritage House, that's also serving as the main lobby into the development. Just to highlight the slide that we just spoke about, so this is a conceptual rendering of the proposed development. So you can see that the Heritage House is front and centered in our development. That's facing and fronting Innisfil Beach Road. Along with that, there's a 2-story podium, which is landscaped, and each of those kind of black units that are a little difficult to see in the slide, those are the commercial live work units. So you will have access directly into those commercial units from Innisfil Beach Road. That's encouraging some pedestrian access and kind of enhancements. As well, behind that, the residential is located above, and the parking podium is actually located behind the behind the commercial podium and under the residential. So from the street side, you will not actually see the parking spaces. And including on top of that, as I noted, the Heritage House is the lobby into the building, so that's amenity space and the primary entrance. To support the proposed development, what we're seeking is a zoning bylaw amendment application. So the lands are currently zoned mixed use 1 MU1 with a MU1 exception 3. And ultimately, the proposed uses are supported by the bylaw as the MU1 zone supports residential and commercial uses. However, essentially what we're seeking is a rezoning to the MU1 exception. And with that, there's a number of site-specific special provisions that we're requesting. Primarily is a height increase to support the increase of units that we're asking for. Along with that, the subject lands are designated downtown commercial area in the town of Innisfil official plan. So the downtown commercial area designation does support higher density mixed use developments as we're proposing, and it directs 8-story buildings, which the application is seeking. So ultimately what we're looking to do is match the zoning bylaw amendment with the official plan direction. With our zoning application, there's a number of technical supporting documents that were included, planning justification report, traffic impact study and parking assessment, shadow study, pedestrian wind study, stage 1 to 2 archaeological assessment, noise study, functional servicing and stormwater management report, site plan and architectural drawings, geotechnical and hydrogeological assessments, along with the arborist assessment. To provide some context on the application, so back in 2020, the subject lands were approved for an OPA application, and the purpose of this was to redesignate the lands from neighborhood commercial area and residential medium density to the downtown commercial. So that's aligning with the development and the vision for Innisfil Beach Road. And at that time, we applied and got approved an official plan amendment for a 4-story, 137-unit project, but that was targeted for purpose-built apartments. Since that time, we had multiple site plan applications, and this was between the years of 2020 and 2021. So ultimately, we did receive an agreement in October of 2021, but it was not executed. As long as we also have a heritage preservation agreement from May of 2021, and that's keeping the Heritage House, which has been integrated into our development. And we also received allocation by the Innisfil Developers Group as well in July of 2021, and that was based on that proposal. So ultimately, to support our zoning bylaw amendment application, we did receive OPA approval, which would permit the previous 4-story apartment building. But ultimately, since 2021, as many of us know, there has been market changes. So the development that was approved is not feasible given the current market, and as well as the build and development costs. So ultimately what we're looking to do is proceed through the zoning bylaw amendment and ultimately build out this project to create new housing options in the Alcona market. So that supports our application that was submitted on September 11th, and ultimately we're here tonight in support of that for the public meeting. In summary, we are asking for a zoning bylaw amendment application to facilitate the development of an 8-story mixed-use development for Innisfil Beach Road. With that, they were essentially asking for an increase in height to match the direction of the official plan, as Innisfil Beach Road is the commercial corridor for Alcona, and there are site-specific exceptions that we're asking for with our zoning bylaw amendment. Finally, the subject site is subject to site plan approval, so the design of the building that you're seeing tonight will be going through that process to ultimately carry out the detailed design. So with ambitious growth targets, a variety of unit types and diversity in the housing market is required, and that's kind of surrounding more attainable housing options. And definitely we need a variety of unit types for these growing communities and the different generations that are coming up and looking for housing options in Innisfil. We believe that the application does not conflict with provincial, county, and municipal land use policies, and we ultimately believe that the development would provide logical and appropriate growth to the primary settlement area of Alcona. Thank you, Council. I'll just step back if there's any questions directed my way.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. We'll hear next from members of the public who have questions or would like to provide comment regarding this item. I understand that no one has registered to speak virtually, Mr. Jacob. So I'll now call on those in the audience here at Town Hall to come forward to the podium and state their name for the record. As a reminder, every person will have an initial 5 minutes and then may return to the podium after everyone has had a first round. Anyone who'd like to speak to this? Thank you. Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Oleg Sverlovs, and I'm a resident of Innisfil. My family owns 4 houses in Alcona. And as a resident, I would like to raise a concern on behalf of residents. Traditionally, like for the last many years, like Alcona was seen as a very desired place for middle-class family to raise their kids. And construction of multi-dwelling house may change the demographic of the town. As we see, from the previous experience, like on 25th Side Road and Innisfil Beach Road, it's changed it drastically and make town less safe, to my experience. Also, the public would be concerned for traffic, which we already experienced in recent years, since we have already increased in populations after pandemic and during pandemic, and our roads are loaded and we already have traffic. Same with the stores. We have the lineups in the stores, which we never had before. Building another 364 units will add additional strain on the town, and childcare facilities, children programs, park access, and even hydro may be overloaded by this. Also, like I said in the beginning, many families moved to Alcona to raise kids and live in safe environment. And building of a multi-unit dwelling house, may bring us closer to Barrie in its population, which is not what people who currently live here would like to see. So, any questions?
No, I don't see any questions, but thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much
appreciated.
for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy and members of Council. It was difficult online to pull up these documents and see clearly, so I may be asking some questions that have already been answered, but I think it's important for those that were struggling, like myself, to look at. So one of my concerns was the increased height, which I misunderstood was 9 stories. But I understand that the one with the parking underground was counted as a story, so it's not above. So it's still an 8-story building, which is approved from Innisfil Beach Road, from the 20th Side Road, all the way to the 25th. So I think that that is already, in our plans and part of the approval. One of the other things I had a question on is the live-work units. How does the town control preventing someone purchasing one, and then they turn it into a residential unit only? So I'm sure that town staff will have those in place as we see more of that coming into the community. The reduced floor area for bachelor apartments, that was a concern for me. Going from 47 square meters to 32, with what I couldn't see in the drawings was any coat closet storage, any visible storage, and how do you find a place to eat? A rest area 7 feet 8 inches and 8.3, a galley kitchen 9.11 to 10 by 12, but that's a hallway. And bachelor apartments are small. There is a great need in our community, so I thank the developers for wanting to put that in this development. But this size, I see, would be great if it was a building for homeless. but it's too small. I would like to see the bachelor apartments staying within the town guidelines of size, and making that small adjustment to the size of that, I know, creates a whole cog in the wheel for the other apartments, but I think it's important for this community. Parking is always a concern for every council with every development. The town requirement is 1.5 per dwelling. The request here is 1 per dwelling. We always have problems with visitor parking in the town. Visitor parking underneath this building, what will happen is we're still an urban rural community, and many people, we don't have the transit system to support like a city, like Barrie. They have 2 vehicles. They're going to use those visitor spots to park their second vehicle. And when they don't have that, they park on the road. So that happens on St. Paul's, where the school is, because they park on the road and then we have congested. But here, you're talking Innisfil Beach Road, so the only option would be on Webster. So it's just something to address. But we have creative staff who, in our planning and our traffic safety, and I believe one of our councillors sits on that committee, that will come up with great solutions to this. The entrance and exit, I know it was just described. When I was looking at it, the concern was how vehicles would enter and exit the building, the school adjacent to it, whether that was the entrance or the exit, because the school has to block off one side of their parking lot to have only an exit. So you have 2 exits or an entrance right beside each other. So working out, is there a buffer, and what is the size of that buffer? And then also with that, the difficulty with where this building is, we all want to see this happen. We want to see something other than this building, the heritage building falling apart and development not happening. The challenge for any developer is the school on one side, and then you have the parking of an individual lot next to it and a commercial plaza, and the poor commercial plaza has all the parents who are dropping kids off to school parking in that. So you have a real congestion of children, a lot of children traffic, and vehicles as well. So what I do like is that, because I think we need to look at the likes. Everything can't be negative. We have to find a way to make this work, and working together. So the provincial planning is housing development in suitable areas that meet the needs of our pedestrians and residents. The application is meeting the needs of those housing options for residents in Innisfil. Bachelors and 1-bedrooms, we need those. So I congratulate them and thank them for doing that. But hopefully there will be adjustment to the size of the bachelor units. The application to build on this lot has been a long time coming. All residents want to see development happening, completed with a complement that is complementary to our neighborhood and our community, and hopefully can incorporate that heritage building, which is crumbling. I appreciate the challenges of working around this heritage building that is currently in ill repair, and hopefully will withstand the surrounding work and the vicinity of the school behind it. I thank the developers for their interest in building in Innisfil, and council for reviewing this application and all perspectives, and staff for all your assistance in finding those miracle solutions to those traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arsati. Other members of the public who would like to make comment at this time? I'll ask again, are there other members of the public who would like to make comment or ask questions at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk if any emails have been received during this meeting.
Your Worship, no emails have been received this evening.
Thank you. I'll now ask council if there's any questions or comments. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Along the same thought lines as Mr. Sadi, there's a few points that come to mind that I have issues with. Primarily the zoning change on the first page of the report states it's for 8 stories, yet if you take a look at the blueprints themselves, the suite breakdown says it's 9 floors. The Ontario Building Code Data Matrix Part 3 states 9 floors. If you take a look at the frontage, you can count 9 floors. So if we're asking for 8 stories, where is that 9th story going? Where is it coming from?
Ms. Morris, did you want to address that?
Through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Fowler, thank you for pointing that out. That is something that we will be reviewing to ensure that the building is in fact 8 stories and meets the official plan policy that permits up to 8 stories. The OP also does have a policy that can permit higher than 8 stories, subject to ensuring that there's appropriate transition from existing low-rise residential as well as a community benefit charge. So we will take that back with the applicant and report back further.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I'm going to mirror Ms. Orsatti's comments regarding the parking access is directly beside the school. I don't see anything more than a stop sign on the property to mitigate any potential incidents that may occur. The additional parking spaces per unit, the overflow, because let's be realistic, people don't live alone these days. They can't afford to with the cost of living. So it says 0.15 spaces per additional unit. So for visitor parking, will that be maintained by the owner of the properties, or is this something the town can mitigate? And lastly, there's a mention of a shadow study with the school. On the report, it says under the draft approved plan of subdivision, which is currently vacant, but it's file number D12-2007-003. Is that being taken into account with the study along with the school, or will the developer of this property or the developer of the draft plan approval, who is responsible for that particular study and how it affects the school, or the property, sorry?
Ms. Morris?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Deputy Mayor Fowler. Yes, so this application was supported by a shadow study. So we will be reviewing that through the review process and considering all adjacent land uses that that impacts from shadows are mitigated.
One more follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so they've increased the height and the angle of the building. Does that taken directly into effect with the shadow study, or will that be standing on its own as to how it affects the surrounding environment?
Ms. Morris?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Deputy Mayor Fowler, that was included in the shadow study, the current proposed height and angle.
Councillor Zanella?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have the same questions as Ms. Orsatti and Deputy Mayor, but I have a couple of other things also. Can we put the picture of the building back up, just so I have a idea of where the driveway is going to go in off of Innisfil Beach Road? Okay, and it's just a one-way driveway? I'm confused because is there not an island that goes so far down Innisfil Beach Road? There is, right? There's an island. I drive it all the time. You think I'd know, but I think I'm just so used to it being there. So does that mean that the traffic would go in the one driveway, and assuming it's the one that's closest to the school, and then it's going to come out that driveway too? Or is it going to go around and come out a driveway by the plaza?
Ms. Morris or Mr. Hunter?
Are you able to answer?
Mr. Hunter got the short straw.
To you, Mayor Dolan. So it is hard to see. There is a traffic island there. So intent is that the pedestrians will come into the site on the right, which is the east, and they are leaving the west, which is referred to as the plaza side there. So we're trying to control safe movements in and avoid people coming from the east one back left, so that will not be permitted.
Okay. And so back to the picture of the building. Is this the final building? Is there anything more going to happen to that building? Is that the final design? That's it? I'm concerned about the facade of the building. You have this beautiful old house, and then you have the building with it, and I was wondering if there could be something a little bit of character around some of those plain square windows, just to make it fit in. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you, Councillor Zanella. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Dillon. So this is a conceptual rendering. This really started with the design charrette that happened back in 2020. So the Heritage House has richer red colors, and that kind of color code is what we wanted to stay with for the development. But as far as the specific design details, that will be taken through site plan approval after we're done our ZBA application. So there is an opportunity, if there's suggestions or tweaks, we can
To
make
add
that.
some, okay.
It's also reviewed by staff, and I assume that's one of the components that is on the design list to review. So.
Okay, I just kind of thought maybe some coining or something around the windows just to make it look a little more, it just looks so plain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zanella. Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. Just a few comments. I believe this would be the tallest building in Innisfil if this comes to fruition, or when this comes to fruition. And also the first underground parking, layered parking that we would have in Innisfil. So as the town infills along downtown Innisfil Beach Road, I am concerned about parking for visitors and whatnot. We have the commercial plaza to the one side and the school to the other. I think at some point the town will have to invest in some sort of a parking facility. I'm just wondering, as a comment, that is there an opportunity to partner with developments to possibly accomplish that? If we have a layered parking garage, could the town accommodate a municipal parking aspect to that? So just a comment for the future. I'm not sure that applies directly to this, but thank you.
Thank you. Did staff want to comment now about the parking plan? Mr. Correa?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, I think it's a really important comment. There are, for example, cash in lieu of parking and funds that the town collects. We also recognize and acknowledge it's expensive to build parking facilities as well. But to your point, Councillor Ises, as Innisfil Beach Road does build out, it'll become an increasingly important need, and we'll work with both this developer and future ones in terms of how that could work for Alcona moving forward.
Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few questions. One pertains to the original plan that came to council 5 or 6 years ago. If I, and you can correct me if my memory is incorrect, but if I remember correctly, there were two issues with this development. One had to do with stormwater, and the other one had to do with a walkway along the park. So I want to know when they have been addressed in this plan here, specifically stormwater, because Innisfil Beach Road is seeing more flooding than I ever remember in the past. So I want to make sure that this development, considering the amount of concrete that's on it, is going to be able to deal with that additional stormwater.
So through Mayor Dolan, excellent questions. What I would say is at the stage that we're at, we're still under the technical review. They have submitted stormwater management and other engineering studies. In terms of the walkway question, it does predate me. I understand that was not addressed during the initial approval of the 4-story building. It's something that will probably form part of our comments and our analysis as we look to bring this forward in the future.
Good to know I don't have Alzheimer's, sorry. I was wanting to make sure my memory was correct. So just a few other questions then. I noticed that in the plan, this is probably more directed at the planners, is that right now about 20% of car sales are electric. 2% of the population now own electric cars. And I don't see anything for those people who have electric cars in this development. Are you planning any electric chargers for residents in this development? I noticed in the back northeast corner there is the utility room, the electrical room, whether or not there is plan to put something in there, and also in the visitors parking as well. So just any question around electrical charging for the development?
Mr. Hunter, are you able to answer that now, or can it be addressed in the staff report?
Through Mayor Dolan, so we're at the zoning bylaw amendment stage, but that is something that is under consideration. So for detailed design for site plan approval, we can look at implementing those charging stations, both on a visitor and resident level.
Okay, yeah, because I think if 2% of the owners have electric cars, you need at least probably 8 to 10 spaces, and if there's a scheduled charging time for those residents, you might be able to get 14 during the day. So I just thought it'd be worthwhile to ask now to make sure that you're not excluding those people who have electric vehicles. So thank you very much. Let's see, the other question I had was around, again, around parking, which is already raised, so I won't raise that one. Traffic flow is that the town's plan is to have several of these new apartments, which I'm fully for in terms of increased density. My concern is around traffic flow in and out around the school, but also just on Innisfil Beach Road itself in terms of does the traffic study consider future developments in terms of how we can mitigate that with, kind of this, I guess, the second or third tall story building on Innisfil Beach Road?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Waters, we can certainly take that back and review that to ensure that or determine if future developments are also considered within the traffic study.
Okay, and my last question has to do with access to the parking lot, but also transition. So since we're the planning, since we're going to authorize this, was there any opportunity, and I think I raised this when we got the subdivision behind this development, was there any opportunity to allow for a back entrance into this subdivision that would, relieve the traffic onto Innisfil Beach Road, and also it might accommodate better access to the school as well? So I didn't know whether or not, is that too late to open those discussions, considering we do have a plan of subdivision for that new development?
Manager Carrera?
Through Mayor Dolan, so I believe it's the Melrose development to the north, which has draft plan approval.
Yes.
I haven't reviewed the drawings with that question in mind, but I don't believe it would be feasible. It's something we could take a look at, though.
Because it would alleviate traffic off and on Innisfil Beach Road, especially when you have the school beside it. I just, if that discussion can still be had, it would be nice to be able to open it.
I believe there are draft approved lots framing the north property line, which would make it very difficult, but we will take a closer look at that.
Okay, thank you. Parkland dedication, I almost forgot that one. We should have a certain amount of parkland dedication. I don't think I remember seeing anything about that in here. So is there any parkland associated with this, or is this cash in lieu of?
Ms. Morris?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Waters, they are proposing cash in lieu of parkland.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing was around transition. Because we're going from single-family schools to an 8-story building, there's no transition plan here for any of this. It's just the massing is quite significant, and so I do have a concern with massing happening there. So is there a cash in lieu of in terms of community benefits in terms of that we can access because of the lack of transition between the two properties? Because I doubt very much you're going to change the massing the way it is right now, change the total design to allow that transition to happen. So is there any opportunity for community benefit around that piece? Thank you.
Manager Carrera?
Through Mayor Dolan, so on page 3 of the report, it does speak to the fact that staff will be reviewing our fairly recently approved community benefit charge bylaw, which would apply based on the topology, number of units, and heights being proposed. But more broadly, in terms of the official plan policies and planning urban design considerations of massing and transition, that's also part of our analysis and will form part of our review.
Other questions or comments from members of council that haven't spoken for the first time yet? Okay, I'm going to ask a couple, then I'll go back to you, Deputy Mayor. So my first of all, I'm having a bit of deja vu on this property, but I was quite excited about having purpose-built rental in the town because we don't have enough of that. My question is that original rezone that we did for the 4-story. Were there any exceptions to the zoning bylaw for that piece that now are considered, so we're not asking again? I don't know if I'm asking this question right, but when this came to council the last time, was there exceptions to our current zoning bylaw that are now baked in? So those, we aren't seeing those exceptions and now these exceptions are on top of that? Am I getting that right, or is every exception in here right from our base zoning bylaw?
To your worship, originally there was a zoning, it was an MU1-3, which was for, if you recall, 30 townhouses on the site. The site was then expanded to a 4-story building, and that 4-story building met all of the regulations of an MU1 zone.
So the 4-story building that came before us, there was no exceptions for parking, or there was no exceptions for like side yard setback or anything like that that we're not seeing in this plan?
Yes, the exceptions for this building are unique to this project.
Thank you for that. And the allocation through IDAG or for wastewater, we currently, and this probably isn't a fair question to ask a planner, I should be asking the in-services, but I understand there was 137 units that are allocated for this property. So in the current allocation, or the phase 1 of the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, there's only 137 and not the, whatever the count is now, 364 that is required. Have we looked into that yet, or is that something that'll be looked in and come back to council?
Through you, Mayor Dolan. So we are looking at that within services as part of the technical review. It will form part of our technical report.
Thank you. And is the underground parking truly underground? Like, I thought I read somewhere in the report something was on the 3rd floor above the parking garage. So I just want to understand how that works. If it's like, will that amenity space be on top of a parking garage, like in the sky, or is that amenity space actually at ground level? And I think that's a Mr. Hunter question, is it?
Team Mayor Dolan, actually, if we can just skip, can I go to the next slide? There we go. It's hard to see on this slide here, but the elevation of the property and the average grade increases as you go to the rear. So what you're seeing now is the 2-level podium at the front of the property of the Heritage House. It essentially sits in front of the parking structure. And that's built into the grade. So you won't see you'll see the start of the parking structure and it gradually sits into the grade. And on top of that 2-level parking podium is interior landscape space. So it's a U-shaped building, and picture the middle of the site being filled in on top. So it will look almost like it's at grade with elevations because it's interior to the site. If I can expand, sorry. It's a U-shape. So if you're sitting in that space, you're going to see buildings beside you. You're not going to see a drop-off. It's built interior.
Thank you. I think I get that. So, but is that then not called a parking garage versus underground parking? Like,
yeah. Team Mayor Dolan, it's a unique situation because when we typically talk about underground parking, we mean entirely below grade. Given the water table on this site, we're integrating it using the elevation changes of the site. So the beginning of the parking structure is hidden behind that 2-level podium. You will be able to see the start of it, but as it goes into the site, it's getting covered up by the structure.
thank you for that. I think I understand it now. And the shadowing study, so the shadowing on the back, or the stepping at the back of the building. So want to kind of understand this better. So the Melrose, I think you called it, has draft plan approval. And so will they be notified, or how will they know then? So which one will come first? I guess it's hard to tell. Market will demand which one comes first, the Melrose subdivision or this building. Because if you've got, if this building is up and then you've got people buying houses in behind, then I guess I would say you bought it knowing there was a building behind you. But if it's the other way around, if their real estate agent has told them, oh no, that's going to stay an empty lot forever, and then an 8-story building goes up, then we're going to have conflict in here about it. I liked Councillor Waters' idea about the idea, because the parking is an issue. I know the building to the west, parking is always an issue at that building already. But if you coordinate with the subdivision to the north, what that means is those residential dwelling, they'll have people parking on those streets instead of parking on. So yeah, okay, I'm creating more questions than I'm asking, but that's it for me for now. Deputy Mayor, you had another one?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is in regard to the subdivision behind and the actual building itself. If you take a look at the property, the northeast corner, there is a green space available that borders between both the subdivision and the school parking lot. As Councillor Waters mentioned before, there was mention of a pathway. Instead of altering the entire plan and reducing parking along the entire east side, is it not feasible to put a small pathway down in the top right corner that would allow access to the rear of the school? And if so, would that conflict with the subdivision that's being built behind? Was that a designated lot, or is there a way we could? Because in the report itself, on the last page, there is a designation where the space is, and there's a road that's going to go bordering the rear of the school. It's in the report itself. So if we could have a space that goes down from the road in through the corner into the school itself, that would not drastically alter the plans and address the issue that was brought up many years ago.
Thank you for that suggestion. Did you want to comment on that, or is that something that you can look at and bring back with the staff report?
Yes, through you, Mayor Dolan, we can certainly take that back and have the applicant consider that into their application.
Thank you. Is that all the questions from council? Oh, sorry, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to mention again the issue around the live, work, and commercial space that was brought up, making sure that, because I also had that concern in terms of keeping it commercial, because I get asked all the time, that there's not enough commercial space in Innisfil, and this is a logical place for it to go, and I would hate to see all of a sudden potential commercial space become a livable space. So I'm not too sure how we reinforce that, but I just don't think it will look very good if you have commercial, and then somebody has their living room there. So I just want to make sure that we're able to enforce that stays as commercial, because I just don't think it would add to the aesthetics of the property or the functionality of the street if that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. And to add to that, if there was the drive-up lanes, if there was an indent there to put at least a few parking spots on Innisfil Beach Road, like we have in other areas where there's a few, because if you have a commercial spot out on front of Innisfil Beach Road, but no place to park, or if you have to drive in and go around to park on the side, I think it would discourage people from popping in. So, but I think we're down deep in the weeds of the site plan versus the zoning bylaw. So I think with that, we'll go to Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to talk to the developer and make sure, I know there's accessible parking that you're putting in the back. I just want to make sure that the building and the streets and the sidewalks are accessible, and especially the elevators. And is there going to be any accessible apartments or condos available like built for wheelchairs or a blind person, like along the accessibility like that.
Mr. Hunter, were you able to answer that?
Through Mayor Dolan to Councillor Saunders. So there's a diversity of units that we're proposing in this building. So there will be accessible units. We're going to do that at the detailed design for site plan approval. Yeah, and elevators, et cetera, will be accessible.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other cards, we'll now go to the recommendation to receive the comments provided this evening. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Zanella, Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. Anyone who wishes to provide comment regarding this application may still do so and may also register as an interested party to be contacted before this item is considered by council. And you can do that by please contacting the clerk's office at clerksoffice@innisfil.ca. And council would like to thank everyone for their participation this evening, and we'll now go to the confirming bylaw and adjournment at 7:33 p.m. Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone, for your comments.